Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome to Simspeed TV. Welcome to Barber Motorsports Park for round 2 of Ozicar Formula Ford. We're on our American tour 2 weeks ago with round 1 at Laguna Seca. Now further east to one of the little gems, I think, of North American road course racing. Very challenging, quite twisty, plenty of elevation change, and a beautiful museum surrounds and medical helicopter to go with it all. We look forward to Ozicar Formula Ford Racing at Barber Motorsports Park. I'm David Haynes, joined by Jason Fewens, Jay Kennedy on the production. Jason, we've loved this championship so far. It's been such a good car that they've brought to iRacing that really suits the Aussie car style of racing and the drivers that we've had join this championship.
Yeah, good evening, David. Good evening, everybody. Tonight's going to be absolutely stellar performance. I've been looking forward to this since we packed up and shifted away from Laguna Seca 2 weeks ago. This car combination and track is very well suited for one another in the sunny state of Alabama, and plenty of passing opportunities, deep on the brakes, a few twisty, tiny, tight bits as well for these drivers to get their head around. So there'll be lots of action brought to you tonight here on Simspeed TV.
Birmingham at one point briefly made famous for its buses, but what about its racing trains tonight? We'll see. Let's take a look at the track. Almost anywhere that you stand, you'll get a great view of a lot of the circuit. It's like Queensland Raceway, but better. And, well, our friend Tony Quinn continues to try to work on the scenery and the groundskeeping there. It's beautiful here, and your key overtaking opportunities are into turn 5. But also, we've seen you can sneak one down the inside at turn 15 if the driver's not expecting you to try to go out wide at turn 14. But again, never say never in Formula Ford racing. They race so close, the slipstream is so strong, the drive is so equally matched at the front of the grid and even in the midfield as well that I think passing could happen just about anywhere. This is a look at our Season 2 championship. We kicked it all off at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, find ourselves now at Barber Motorsports Park, Willow Springs, Watkins Glen, USA Speedway and Lime Rock Park to round it out. Mark all that in your calendar and make sure you subscribe to Simspeed TV wherever you're watching, because you'll catch all of those races live here as well. We are getting ready now for the first of 2 races tonight, and this is how they're going to grid up with qualifying now completed. John Merritt ahead of James Chastanoff is going to be a very exciting front row. Brody Shepherd and Adrian Duke just behind them on row number 2. Then we find Stuart Vaughan and Tim Harris. Stuart Vaughan has been massively competitive in this car and is our defending champion. Matthew Mites and Jacob Wallmeyer are the row behind, and our top 10 completed by Nathan Verney and Dennis Hancock. The grid continues though with Sean Doyle and Ben Wheeler in 11th and 12th. We got Tony Baker and Peter Wilkinson, Wilco, in 14th. Warren Henry, Leon Williams, 15th and 16th. Darren Shannon, Ira Felberg, very close times between them there. And then John Snell and Brendan Nealon are 19th and 20th. Peter Bowling, 21st. That qualifying time for Ash Knowles, very, very surprising. But they are ready to go racing. 20 minutes of action around Barber Motorsports Park. They are away as Barney whips that green flag, and you pulse it up. An amazing, amazing run. John Merritt taking a comfortable lead into the downhill, sweeping turn number 1, then carousels back the other way with a very, very long right-hander. 2 going all the way around. Matthew Mites gets out wide into some of the marbles. For John Merritt, that's a perfect start.
Yeah, it looks like this clean set of hills being shown by the cars out in front as the rest of the field behind make their way, weaving, trying to warm up tyres before they head their way down into that tricky braking corner here at 5A, 5B. Like I said in the opening, great passing opportunity there, and a couple of drivers sticking it down the inside, trying to make that move stick early and get some positions done. You see a couple of teammates there in the locked-on guys following each other in sequence as they go back to single file. In through this really tight, twisty section, there is really only one line through here, and everybody else just falls back in and makes their way through without too much drama.
One of the places you've got to really attack the curbs if you're going to go quick. Stuart Vaughan and Brodie Shepherd attacking each other. Looks like Vaughan has made his way up into 3rd place. They were wheel to wheel, and there's contact behind them as Tim Harris and Jacob Wallmeyer spin around, and someone else collects Jacob Wallmeyer as he spins back across the track. 3 cars making contact and big damage for some of them as well. It's Matthew Mites who gets tangled up in that.
Yeah, his car doesn't look like it's got too much damage, but he has lost a lot of track position on the opening lap of the opening heat here. 12 laps, 1 car out on the dirt. Adrian Duke in that distinctive coffee looking livery there, just facing the wrong way, and he's welcomed really a couple of cars. Looks like there's oil on the track. Everybody's having a lot of trouble on cold tyres. Darren Shannon in there as well as another one of the locked-on cars, Peter Wilkinson. P-Dog there just trying to get back up to speed. A lot of chaos and carnage on the opening lap, but back up the front of the field, John Merritt, James Chastenoff, Stuart Vaughan are your top 3. We jump on board at the moment with Brodie Shepherd in the Full Send Racing Formula Ford 1600 as he's hard on the brakes into 5A, 5B, and he gets that really, really important drive back out up at the hill.
Looking to go with Stuart Vaughan as Vaughan closes back in on Merritt and Chastenoff 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. You can see them all starting to slink away, but that final corner, massively challenging. Deceptively challenging with no paved runoff. A tiny half a tyre on the grass will get you in trouble. 2 tyres on the grass will get you in trouble, though, at the backside of the circuit. And there was Wallmeyer spinning back across the track and getting Matthew Mites in the process. One change this round from round 1 is in the pit stop procedure. You saw a bunch of cars on the lane at the end of lap number 1. Rather than needing to change all 4 tyres in the pit window, drivers just need to do a drive-through. There was too much random variation, disadvantaging drivers who'd done nothing wrong as far as the pit stops went. So we're through to a drive-through instead. Everyone's got to take one at some point in the race. Some 4 drivers opting to do it lap number 1, the rest of them staying out.
Yeah, Dennis Hancock in the pits. Peter Wilkinson, after that little bit of damage on the opening lap, has decided to park it for race number 1. But we jump on board James Chastenoff, looking back at the livery of Stuart Vaughan as he disappears for a quick moment and reappears. Thankfully, his connection's back under control. There'll be a bit of a moment there for him, but no love lost as he takes a big dive under brakes. There's a lock-up and contact is made. The 2 wheels get locked together and Chastenoff is facing the wrong way in a cloud of smoke.
A big, big skill error from Stuart Vaughan takes James Chastenoff off the road, spins him around, and it didn't look malicious. It just looked like he got in there too hot. He locked him up, and from here it looks like he's trying to give that spot back, but a lot of harm already done. Here's the replay from the onboard. Still, a car length back here, looking for the inside, locks them both up. Yeah, and there you see the tyres interlock as they do in an open wheel car like this. Very, very messy and clearly, patently, far too ambitious.
So Chastenoff and Vaughan sitting in 2nd and 3rd, a drop back to 4th and 5th. That's given Nathan Burney a look and an opportunity to sit on the podium at this early stage of the race. So he has got a good 7 seconds clear of this little battle pack on our screen at the moment as the 2 cars get awfully squirrely as they make their way up over the crest of the hill on the last back part of the circuit through the final sector. Chastenoff going a little bit defensive. No, he's diving into the pits to get his pit stop sequence out of the way. And wouldn't you know it, Vaughan's gone with him, following him in every shadow move he makes.
cars have a pit lane speed limiter and they can use it, and they will. So therefore it means the drive-through should be pretty equal for everyone. You've still got to practice your pit entry, and it is a tough one here because you go wide out of that corner, and then you are effectively driving a street circuit for 2 corners until you get to the start of the pit lane speed limit. Same can be said. Coming off the pit lane can be challenging, and Ash Knowles has spun around there. He's going to get going now, though. So you've got a handful of drivers who haven't taken their pit lane drive-through, and it's positions 1 through to 7th. Dennis Hancock, he has had a ripper of a compulsory pit stop. Finds himself in 8th and ahead of some cars that maybe we wouldn't have expected. Let's see how this one plays out in race number 1.
You can see on your timing screen, Stuart Vaughan, James Chastanoff followed each other into the pits, and Vaughan's actually got the better of him by a good 4 seconds. So something's happened to Chastanoff on his out lap, maybe a little bit of traffic.
James Chastanoff had damage, so he actually, rather than a drive-through, did stop in his bay and get some of that repairs done. We're informed by the director, and I can confirm as I look at my live timing as well. But this track continuing to play havoc with some, and Matthew Mites ends up backwards into the Armco, and there is massive damage on that right rear suspension. He's not getting out of there at all. Now, here comes Brendan Nealon, and he demonstrates the challenge of the pit entry here at Barber. You're going downhill in a very, very tight 1-car width section with Armco on either side, but it's not the pit lane speed limit yet, so you've got to attack it. Dennis Hancock attacking turn number 1. You see the drift angle that these cars get when you're racing them quickly. Short wheelbase, short angular momentum length, something, I don't know the physics word, but they drive a lot like a go-kart in that respect.
Yeah, short wheelbase, very, very tight turning circle, and easy to lose the back end of these, particularly when the tyres are cold. But we're having a look now at Dennis Hancock in that Jamaican looking livery. Very much looks like part of the Jamaican bobsled team with that little orange helmet poking out the top, but he has made his way up to P5 after taking his compulsory pit sequence through the pit lane, down through this sequence, which is can be a tricky little section of the track, but he manages to manage it. Too many managers in there, but he manages it nonetheless, and continues on his way without too much drama.
It's working out well for him so far, but he is right on the ragged edge of the grip and pushing on because he's got some quick cars behind him. In the shape of Stuart Vaughan, for example, looking to get past Benjamin Wheeler, which he'll do so. One of those places we might not have expected, but through goes Vaughan. You can tell that Dennis Hancock has kissed his lucky egg today.
So we have another driver back through the pit lane as we watch him go through, Nathan Verney, so out of P3. So at speed limit, once he gets to that green cone, he'll release the pit limiter, and he is back in race mode. So there's a sequence of cars coming down pit lane, making their way through turn number 1, but I think Verney should clear those without too much drama. In fact, he is in this little battle here on screen at the moment.
Got some cars in front of him that haven't stopped yet, but he's come out ahead of Dennis Hancock rather critically. So for the drivers, 2 have stopped. Your top 3 is Nathan Verney, Dennis Hancock, Warren Henry at the moment. You can tell exactly how much time the likes of Stuart Vaughan and James Chastanoff lost as they made contact at turn number 5. With John Snell, no pit stop taken just yet. Some of those who've gone through the lane starting to queue up behind him.
So lap 6 of 12, we're halfway through the opening heat race here at Simspeed TV at Barber Motorsport Park, and it looks like the field has pretty well got themselves under control. That's Darren Shannon doing Deniliquin Ute Mustard Donuts there at turn number 5. It looks like he's drunk. He can't keep the thing on the track. But out in front, 164 of John Merritt, not putting a foot wrong. Without putting the commentator's curse on him, he has got this thing under control at this stage of the race. 3.2 second lead back to Brody Shepherd, and then it's a big, big gap. Of course, Nathan Verney there in P3, but taking his pit sequence already. So we're just left with the front 2 cars out the front to battle it out for the second half of the race.
Sean Doyle, Tim Harris drives on screen at the moment. It's about a 20-second drive through here at Barber. John Merritt's got about 24 seconds ahead of Nathan Verney. So that's pretty critical for John Merritt that he keeps that gap where it is or extends it somewhat. The amount of slide they get as the tyres get light on the crest in towards turn 1, no downforce to speak of, really shows that it's all in the control of the drivers. Dennis Hancock has a spin at turn 5. Proving difficult. Is it the downshifts or is it just the elevation change there that's doing it to him?
I would imagine it's probably the elevation change in sequence with the downshift, because the back at the end of the car, as they are hard on the brakes, gets super light, and that's where predominantly a lot of the braking is going to happen. So the back end gets light as you turn the car around. The back of the car wants to rotate as well, and that's where we've seen a couple of drivers come unstuck already. But these cars very much they highlight the fact that smooth can be fast.
So race number 1 also setting the grid for race number 2, meaning that DNF or a big mistake in this race sets back your whole night and your whole round. So there are a few drivers whose lap 1 means they've got work to do across this race and into the next as well. You cannot rule out drivers like Stuart Vaughan, like James Chastanoff coming back in race number 2 to strike again. But at the moment, things are still looking good for John Merritt. His lead over Nathan Verney and his lead over Brodie Shepherd continue to extend. He has actually just a little bit of lap traffic here that he's had to work through as well with regards to Liam Williams and Matthew Mites. His teammate Tony Baker with a mirror full of Ira Felberg.
Yeah, one thing we should really highlight, as you can see on your screen, is the pros, the gains and the losses that some drivers have had in the sequence of this race. And at the moment, John Snell, the biggest mover in the green, moving up 15 positions to currently sit at P4. So he will be looking very healthy for race number 2. And of course, our biggest loser at this stage, it looks like Matthew Mites, who's parked it after a good qualifying performance early on. So keep that in the back of your mind, because we do know Matthew Mites has the speed to run with these guys at the front of the field, and he'll have his work cut out for him for race number 2 shortly.
More problems for Dennis Hancock, who briefly was sitting very pretty, but a few little mistakes, some spins, time lost, and he lost a chunk of positions now with his second off-track excursion. Elevated a few other drivers up some spots. John Snell now comes in to make his pit stop. Only 3 drivers left who haven't. John Merritt, Brodie Shepherd, and Adrian Duke, from what I can tell.
So just about everybody in the mid-pack taking their pit sequence, and that has put Stuart Vaughan, James Chastanoff back up into P4, P5. So it wasn't as detrimental as what we may have thought a couple of moments ago, because the field sorted themselves out, and they've put themselves back up the pointy end of the field. So Chastanoff at the moment on screen with Warren Henry directly behind him, with Ben Wheeler following through in P number 7. So a couple of names there that you would normally see outside the top 10 that are doing a really good job tonight and making their presence felt.
Chastity's been fighting his way back forward here, passing Warren Henry, Benjamin Wheeler in the last couple of laps. Here's Sean Doyle and Tim Harris. Harris looking one way, looking the other. The race leader is coming through the pit lane now, and I think Brodie Shepherd likely will as well. They go a long way down the pit entry before they actually trigger the beam, so it's going to be hard to know, but actually Brodie Shepherd does stay out when Merritt resumes. Be pretty important, but it's looking comfortably ahead of Verney, Vaughan and Chasty. Doyle is under a bit of pressure here though, and there's a few places that a little mistake can cost you. The final corner, you almost got to think of it like a street circuit there, because the fastest line is to get all the way to the edge of the pavement. Oh, but he doesn't even get all the way out there. The rear steps out on him in the mid corner, and Sean Doyle loses the positions.
Like reflexes from Tim Harris there to avoid the back end of Doyle as he lost it coming onto the front straight for the 10th time. We only got a couple of laps to go, but really good car control there from Tim Harris to avoid that little bit of an incident. Could have been very easily caught up and contact and damage had. So little bit of pressure, and he manages to continue on his way.
Not many laps left in this first of 2 races for tonight in the second round of Ozicar Formula Ford. Shepherd, the only driver who hasn't served the compulsory stop just yet, and I think this lap would be his last opportunity. Oh, who's that off track in it? That is Brody Shepherd. He's pushing on this in-lap, and there he goes to pit lane. Best he can probably hope for is second place in this one, with the lead that John Merritt had over him before Merritt stopped. You can see Merritt already navigating the final corner with 2 laps to go, going back to the race lead. Shepherd must still be thinking podium, because he will be neck and neck, I suspect, with Vernie. Where is Vernie? Yep, here on the pit straight. So that'll be close. Vaughan definitely still looking like 4th. Out of pit entry, pit exit even, goes Brody Shepherd, and around the outside, right in contact with Nathan Vernie. 2 laps to go. 2nd and 3rd. The battle is on.
Yeah, Vernie's got fresh, well, not fresh tyres, but warm tyres already up to temperature. So Brody Shepherd's going to have to work pretty hard defensively down into this braking section. We've already seen a couple of cars come unstuck, particularly when they have cold tyres. Different racing lines. Nathan Vernie looks like a very wide entry trying to get the cut back, but doesn't get the job done. So at the moment, tucked underneath the rear axle of Brody Shepherd, but Brody's probably got his tyres just about up to temperature now, halfway around on this out lap. So it may have been an opportunity missed there for Nathan Vernie, but I'm sure he'll keep pushing right until the drop of the checkered flag.
Of course, winner in this little duel gets to start on the front row for race number 2. We saw John Merritt really capitalise on his start in this race. And on the front row, I think it's a good chance to lead and then avoid some of the chaos that could happen further back in the field. Different lines through this S's section for Shepherd and Vernie. Maybe Vernie looking for a later apex, looking to flow speed off the exit to try to attack. Willing to go a little bit wider as well in the double apex corner here to get so close at the final corner, which has been the scene of drama lap 1 all the way through to last lap. And it is a good exit from Vernie. If he gets to the inside of 1, it's got to be a super decisive move, because that would leave you around the outside for 2 and 3, and he knows it. So John Merritt leads them onto the final lap. Brody Shepherd successfully able to defend second place for the moment. And coming towards that final lap, Stuart Vaughan shows that he is going to be a driver to reckon with in race number 2, as he sets the fastest lap of the race.
So the battle for the 2nd and 3rd, the 2 steps on the back end of the podium, is the closest battle on track at the moment. They're separated by just 3 or 4 tenths. You can see the gap on your screen, it doesn't lie. So Brody Shepherd got his mirrors completely full of Nathan Vernie, who's moving around in the background, just trying to pressure Brody into a mistake. But Brody's been up the front end of the field more than once, not his first rodeo, so he'll know exactly what he has to do to bring this thing home in 2nd place. But Vernie desperately wants that 2nd place and the front row start for race number 2.
Absolutely. First race of the night, not far away from wrapping up, and plenty of battles still to take place on this final lap. Barber Motorsport Park, a tricky place, and we've seen the final hurdle, the final corner, trip others up. It will not trip up John Merritt as he goes pole to victory, ready for the checkered flag, and he wins at Barber, Shepherd and Vernie. I think that's still going to be the order. Is Barney a bit late swapping to the checkered flag?
No, I think he just stopped and took a breath. He'll stop here in a sec, wait for the next cars to come through.
It's Ben Wheeler and Warren Henry, 6th and 7th. They're going to cross the line and stay in those positions. Some pressure on John Snell. We know Adrian Duke can be quick, but he's going to need to be so quick off the final corner if he's going to get his nose in front before the checkered flag. He'll pull out side by side, but I suspect the line will come in time to save John Snell, and it does, to the tune of about 1/10 of a second.
There's a couple of cars still out on track. This is Matthew Mites after a horror run tonight. A couple of off-track excursions on the green stuff certainly didn't do him any favours. He did make his way back to the pits, get his car repaired, and he did make it back out on the track to be classified as a finisher, but a lonely old drive for him for the second part of the race. got a couple of corners to negotiate. Then he will be greeted with Barney. You can see him up in that little podium waving furiously. On the right-hand side, Peter Bowling crossing the line in 22, and here comes Matthew Mites, our final finisher for race number 1.
Certainly wasn't easy. It bit a couple of the drivers, 3 of them finishing a lap down, but Matthew Mites was the last on the lead lap. Looking at the finishing results of race number 1, John Merritt could not be happier with that. I'm sure probably the biggest winning margin I feel like we've seen. These cars typically race so close. John Merritt, he was just perfect when others clattered into each other, made mistakes, touched the grass, spun out, all of that. He was clinical and 13 seconds ahead of Brodie Shepherd and Nathan Verney. Stuart Vaughan and James Chastanoff, well, Vaughan not helping himself and not helping Chastity in that race. Ben Wheeler, Warren Henry, Tim Harris, Dennis Hancock, and Sean Doyle completing the top 10 with Dennis Hancock, Jacob Wallmeyer, Matthew Mites. I got them looking wrong. That's confusing me, but I'll just read what's on the screen. Tony Baker, Ira Felberg, John Snell, Adrian Duke, Jacob Wallmeyer, Ash Knowles, Brendan Neal and Darren Shannon, Matthew Mites, Leon Williams, and Peter Wilkinson, Peter Bowling. My timing screen saying something slightly different to that, and so we'll wait and see exactly what the grid will look like for race number 2. It's not far away, our second of 2 races for the evening here from Barber Motorsports Park in Ozicar Formula Ford. We'll take a quick break, but they are 3 minutes away from racing race number 2.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
We're halfway through tonight's racing at Barber Motorsports Park, and well, we're looking forward to 2 weeks' time when we go to Willow Springs Raceway, and then of course some absolute classics. Watkins Glen, always super close racing in these cars that slipstream so well. That will be insane, I dare say. So will the oval round at USA Speedway. That will give us something different. Lime Rock Park, classic sort of a rookies track on iRacing, free content, all sorts of low horsepower cars race so competitively there, and you get a lot of laps for your money as well. But we're not done at Barber Motorsports Park just yet, Jason.
Now, like you said, halfway through, we've seen plenty of action in the opening 12 laps here in race number 1. You see a couple of cars come unstuck on the grass, saw some contact after a couple of cars made some heavy braking opportunities, so we'll see all that again in race number 2 and more. Front row, John Merritt, Brodie Shepherd starting at race number 2. They've earned this right to be on the front row of the grid. Nathan Verney, after a stellar performance, is sitting alongside Stuart Vaughan on row number 2. As we flick through, have a look at row number 3, James Chastanoff and Ben Wheeler. Good result for Ben Wheeler there, up the pointy end of the field for him as well. Before we look at Warren Henry, another good result, and beside him in P number 8, Tim Harris.
Looking through the rest of the field, they're ready to go now though, with Dennis Hancock and Sean Doyle as our top 10. Barney knows where his flags are and he's about to drop the green one for 20 minutes of racing at Barber Motorsports Park again. John Merritt has nailed the clutch drop in these cars with a great getaway all the way across back to the regular racing line. Means he has no problems with turn number 1, while Stuart Vaughan has to get his elbows out looking for positions in the opening couple of laps here. He has gotten one of them. He's looking for more. Is the field cleanly through turn number 2? So far they are, and your positions gained are Vaughan, Harris, Adrian Duke and Jacob Wallmeyer making some movement as well. Stuart Vaughan looking down the inside at turn number 5 again, where he messed up the braking earlier on. Middle of the field tries to go too wide through there, which they can do if everyone gives some respect, but it's so tough to go too wide up here at turn number 7. You've got to ride the curbs to be quick. Single file up front. Here, things get much more challenging in the midfield.
Yeah, draft train for the top 5 before Ben Wheeler sticks his nose out and has a look into turn 7 and 7A, but doesn't get the job done, stays in P number 6. But up the front, John Merritt showing a clean set of heels early on, 0.9 of a second back on this opening lap. Stuart Vaughan has made his way up to P2. Brodie Shepherd sitting back in P3, and he has the company of Nathan Verney and James Chastanoff rounding out your top 5 here on the end of lap number 1.
Really looks like Brodie Shepherd might have made a rough exit of the museum turn, because Vaughan had him in what's a pretty short straight there and got up another position from 4th to 2nd in this lap so far. Oh, he does ride a bit of the curb, get wide, and seen Vaughan pull this off before. A narrow exit carrying a lot of speed through there, and he is up into 2nd. Some drivers taking their pit stops now. Benjamin Wheeler, Sean Doyle, Dennis Hancock, Ira Fellberg, Ash Knowles, about a third of the field working their way through there. Creates a little bit more free space with some others off the road there for Bowling. Is it in the 32? He finds you go far enough out there past the grass. You get a little bit of paved runoff, which will help you collect yourself, gather it all up. Big lock up at turn 5. Brodie Shepherd off to a rough start in this race number 2, dropping a couple more spots. Chastanoff gets past. Nathan Verney gets past as well, and they're side by side heading to 7.
Halfway around lap number 2 now, and the top 5 have split themselves up a little bit there with that mistake from Brodie Shepherd. Another mistake there, and Tim Harris makes a little bit of side contact, but they manage to keep going, all pointing in the right direction. But what this has done is given our top couple of drivers, John Merritt, Stuart Vaughan, some daylight between them and the fighting pack behind. James Chastanoff sitting out in the middle of nowhere by himself in P3 at the moment, so a lonely drive for him early on race number 2. But the battle for the spot off the podium is happening right now on screen. Tim Harris, Brodie Shepherd and Nathan Verney sitting back, rubbing his hands together, waiting for an opportunity.
He's seeing double locked on lads, but one of them decides, you know what, enough of this, I'm around the outside, I'm going for pit entry. But Shepherd still not riding the curbs well, under a lot of pressure. Nathan Verney's going to give us a view that we weren't expecting towards turn number 1. Decides he doesn't want to get down the inside there, too risky. Try to pass somewhere else, and he'll know that Shepherd was weak on the brakes in towards turn number 5, because that's where he locked up a lap ago. Out of the pit lane, some of those cars rejoining, and we've had, of course, another group of them go through, like Tim Harris. He's going to rejoin side by side with Ben Wheeler.
So lap 3 of 12 already. It doesn't take long for these cars to circulate around this circuit, and we are got a real battle on our hands up in front. This is exactly what we have grown to see and accustomed to in the previous weeks here with the Formula Fords on Ozicar. It's John Merritt and Stuart Vaughan Battling it out the front of the field, Stuart Vaughan currently with the fastest lap of the race, using the draft from Merritt to tow himself around to get that purple sector against his name.
And he's looking to go round the outside in the S's. He'll get swapped back here from Merritt, who says, I'll get back to the inside for this sequence of right-handers. And Stuart Vaughan must have led the race for about 100 metres there before Merritt had him covered. But again, you're going to see Vaughan go from a wider entry, carry more speed off the final corner, and neither of them are interested in pitting yet. Running long definitely suited John Merritt in race number 1, but he's under a lot more pressure in race number 2 here. Stuart Vaughan, who's at the fastest lap last race, all over him and showing he's willing to try to go side by side anywhere, willing to pass into any corner. There is no safe moment for John Merritt.
Now you can see some shadows on the track as there a little bit of cloud cover comes over the circuit at the moment. And then they come down the hill into turn 5A where there's a little bit more sunshine as well. So some track temperature variation depending on where you are at the circuit. We'll have a look at an Ozicar.net replay. This is Vernie making the move on Brody Shepherd into turn number 1, getting down the inside and making the job stick. So good job, good effort there from Vernie to move up into P4.
One man who wants to see John Merritt and Stuart Vaughan go side by side for the race lead once again is James Chastanoff. 1.5 seconds off the race lead here. Needs to be closer to get the slipstream. Needs to be closer if he's going to pass them through pit strategy or anything like that. He would love to see first and second battle to let him get into this. John Merritt's not going to give up the left-hand side, the inside line to Stuart Vaughan this time, who says, okay, I'll try to do to you what you did to me. Wide entry into the right-hander, big speed over the hill. Wouldn't be surprised if Vaughan goes for pit entry this time, just feeling like he's tucked in behind. He won't. He'll try to chess move John Merritt, put him in a place that makes it difficult to defend in the final sequence of corners and just keep him on his toes, keep him under pressure in towards every corner, like turn 1, where Vaughan now looks down the inside, and he is so brave and goes to the race lead.
Yeah, Vaughan looking like he really wants to be out in front, but what this has done is brought James Chastanoff not back to him, but he has certainly made some ground. But talking up Nathan Vernie there only a lap or so ago, and he's facing the wrong way on the circuit, too hot on the exit of turn number 1, and a big puff of smoke. And you see him hard up against the Armco, trying to turn around to get back up to speed.
So Shepherd goes back into 4th, and Jacob Wallmeyer has gained many positions in this race so far. Now he runs up in 5th. This is the leading trio. James Chastanoff getting a little bit closer every time. First and second battle. Vaughan leads. Will he be under the pressure that John Merritt was given from him? Is it roles reversed, or can Vaughan get away? Does anyone think, maybe I look to stop early to do something different here? I think that's potentially short-term thinking. Longer term, you do want to stay out because they're still lapping quicker than everyone who's not top 3.
Yeah, well, if you're out in front like these guys are at the moment, what you've got to do is be very conscious about whether you're going to come back in traffic if you do decide to pit at this point of the race. So by staying out, you're maximising the benefit of clean track in front of you. Even if they are battling a little bit, they have not got the slower traffic to contend with. So you can understand why these guys are staying out for as long as potentially possible and making it a late pit stop.
Merritt closing up plenty in the slipstream. Jacob Wallmeyer in 5th, doing likewise, but not able to pass Brody Shepherd in 4th. It's all battles inside of the top 5 as the top 3 close up. And Shepherd, a bit of damage on his side pod there. Did we catch exactly when that happened? And do we know if that's going to be hurting his straight line speed much?
Yeah, I don't know if we've captured it on screen for race number 2 here tonight, but certainly doesn't look like it's affected his straight line speed. As we say, that Wallmeyer goes deep under brakes, and Shepherd tries to do the cut back, but can't quite get the car turned. A little bit of the curve just unsettles the car on the change of direction. So Wallmeyer up into P4, but while that's been happening, James Chastanoff out on the back of this group has now got the gap down to about 0.8 of a second, and in the process taking fastest lap of the race.
Merritt back over Vaughan, and we've seen them swap and try to pass in this final sector as well. Different lines into this first bit of the right-hander, completely blind as you go over the crest on the exit. and into this double apex section where the leading driver needs to be careful they don't offer up too much of the inside line, but you want to take the wide arc as the fastest line. Is a toss-up between how defensively you drive and how vulnerable you make yourself with a driver right behind, offering up the inside line to them in places you might not need to. Halfway point of the race, and there's nothing in it with the leaders. Brody Shepherd in fourth. We're going to find this is where the damage came from, about there. And I do remember seeing that, but so much has happened in both of our races so far.
So P1, P2, P3 on the screen as they make the way downhill. It's caught a couple of drivers out this evening, but these three experienced drivers doing a pretty good job of keeping things under control. This is a battle for 4 and 5. It's Warmeyer and Shepherd going head to head. Warmeyer keeping a pretty cool, calm, collective head on him at the moment. But look at this, the BAR car of James Chastanoff, as close as he has been over the whole sequence of this race so far. He's under a second to the guys in front.
Yep, he just witnessed Stuart Vaughan play defensive in towards turn 5, track out wide and have a bit of a slide off the exit, but then defend the inside in towards the turn 7 complex where John Merritt wasn't gutsy enough to try to go side by side through there. We've just seen a replay of what sometimes happens when you go side by side through there. It's side pod damage, and they've got too much to play for, too much to lose to really play complete risk and put all of the chips down on the table. Going for pit entry though, Stuart Vaughan means John Merritt and James Chastanoff will carry on into first and second in this race. But an interesting decision from Vaughan. Must have some understanding of where he's going to rejoin in this race, that he's willing to take this gamble. If he thinks I'm quicker in clean air than John Merritt, that's the right move to do. But if he gets traffic, the gamble won't pay off.
Oh, I think he was going to come out just in front of this little battle here of Tim Harris and Nathan Verney, which as he makes his way out past the cones now, he's down the hill back on the circuit. So he's probably got a good 4 or 5 seconds of this little battle pack in front. So he's done a pretty good job there of predicting where he's going to come out in the scheme of things compared to a lot of other drivers. But we'll see whether James Chastanoff and John Merritt counteract that and dive into the pits next lap to try and cover that off.
Again, watching a great battle. It's Formula Ford's race oh so closely together, and it's Sean Doyle and Benjamin Wheeler, and Doyle gets down the inside, Benjamin Wheeler around the outside, not finding a whole lot of traction, though you sometimes can around there. And elsewhere, the teammate Brody Shepherd against Jacob Wallmeyer, 3rd and 4th. This is the kind of racing they've been having back and forth, when Wallmeyer on the inside there, not able to quite make the move stick to the apex, but really just finding traction in an odd place off the corner. So great racing, both of them giving just enough space here as they continue to battle for what we expect to be 4th and 5th position. If Wallmeyer can pull it off, he'll be the biggest mover in the race.
So Merritt, Chastanoff continue around for another circulation of the track. Brody Shepherd, from Full Send Racing, diving into the pits, hits the pit limiter, and he has a trundle down pit lane that is going to consist of about 20 odd seconds. A couple of locked on cars making their way back onto the straight as well. This is Verney and Doyle, P7, P8, and in the background you can see Ben Wheeler and Dennis Hancock still going at it, trying to fight for the back end of the top 10.
4 laps left in this. Most drivers have made their pit stops. They've been through pit lane. There's only a few that we're still waiting on, and critically, it's John Merritt and James Chastanoff where they'll be relative to Stuart Vaughan, who took that early stop. Here is Brody Shepherd after his rejoining in maybe a little bit of traffic, so that benefits Jacob Wallmeyer in the battle he was having against them, but also suggests Wallmeyer, if he has a slow pit entry or a bad in-lap, could rejoin behind this group and in and amongst some of this traffic. Very, very close now for Brody Shepherd where he's rejoined, compared to Doyle and Wheeler, who took the early stop and seemed to have benefited from it really, really well. I guess if you come from the mid-pack or a little bit further back, the early stop gives you clean air, but if you're from the front of the grid, it just feeds you back into it. Speaking of from the front of the grid, John Merritt, the race leader, through pit lane. Chastanoff does not take that option, so now they split again on strategy in what was a 3-way battle for the lead. You must simply wait and see if Chastanov's made the right move. If Merritt's made the right move, where Merritt and Vaughan are could be so critical for this race lead. It looks like Vaughan, does he have it? He doesn't. Merritt immediately chops across to the racing line as quickly as he can. Battle resumes with only a couple laps left.
Yeah, so Chastanov was right on the back end of Merritt when he pitted on this lap. So working off that theory, James Chastanov and Stuart Vaughan should literally come out, go around turn 2 on side by side if Chastanov was to pit on this lap. There is a couple of laps remaining here. Race number 2, the feature race tonight at the Ozicar Barber Motorsport Park event, round number 2 here for season number 2.
So Wallmeyer's resumed from his pit stop right in the thick of battle, but crucially behind Sean Doyle. But once again, back side by side with Brodie Shepherd. Benjamin Wheeler in 8th, watches on and thinks this could get big, this could get risky, and it could for what's the battle for the race lead here as well. Stuart Vaughan wants it. He's looking one way, looking the other, trying to cross back, trying to cross over, trying not to hit John Merritt. They got so close in this final sector. Vaughan will demand the inside line here towards the end of the lap. Merritt will try to carry big speed on the arcing line around the outside, hold the inside for the final corner. Vaughan again going for the switchback, going for the over-under, but Merritt parks it in front of him. Chastanov is halfway down the pit lane. I don't think he's close enough to pit exit to still be in the picture for the race win. It looks like it's going to be Vaughan and Merritt with 2 laps to go. Vaughan with the inside goes back through into the outright race lead, but he's got John Merritt less than a Formula Ford car length behind him. 2 more circuits of Barber Motorsport Park.
Yeah, so on that lap where Merritt dove into the pits, Chastanov was out with clean air behind him, but in front of him he came up behind John Merritt and had a spin on the second to last corner. So that's why Chastanov lost a lot of time to those leaders out in front, leaving it as a 2-horse race.
Merritt with 1 win already tonight. Vaughan looking to get one. Merritt looking to sweep Barber if he can. But it won't happen at turn 7. They really have been going at each other in the final sector, haven't they? Yeah,
it was a lot of respect between these 2 drivers. They've done plenty of laps within close sequence of each other in the past, but Stuart Vaughan and John Merritt both races at hard, and both of them want to stand on that top step of the podium and spray the virtual champagne. So white flag as they come around to get the last lap signal in 2 corners time, and I can see John Merritt there not being content with second, so she could be elbows out for a final lap.
Vaughan tight on the way into the final corner, almost up against the grass, might not have been able to hold full throttle. John Merritt has a great run at him to keep the pressure on for this final lap of the race. Vaughan not home and hosed until the lady sings, and here's Merritt looking to the inside at turn number 2, not where you'd expect, but he has to demand some space down the inside there as he had a great run through 1, and again he'll put Vaughan offline in the braking zone at turn 5, which has been his weakness. James Chastanov from 3rd, dropping out of the picture. Tim Harris now runs 3rd. Not going perfectly for James Chastanov at Barber Motorsports Park. Vaughan with the inside at 5, manages to hold on to it. Looking for the crossover. John Merritt will have the outside towards turn 7. Big curbs here. Tough to go side by side, but it's the final lap of the final race. John Merritt thinks championship, big picture. He can have a 1st and a 2nd. The best that Vaughan could get is 4th and a 1st if he holds on to this one. Merritt playing the odds at the moment, but he still has a chance.
They're in the final back half of the final lap now. Merritt there tucked underneath the rear axle, and he is going to have a look under brakes. Like I said, he's not content, but he doesn't quite not close enough to get the job done. A couple of corners to go, and you think Vaughan just about might have this under control, but we've seen some cars lose it on the last corner onto the straight. We'll find out in a couple of seconds. And you see Merritt in a big puff of smoke facing across the track. Not sure whether Tim Harris is going to be close enough to capitalise, but our leader out in front is Stuart Vaughan taking the win. Background, I think it is Tim Harris in front of John Merritt for P2, P3.
Stuart Vaughan holds on, takes the win. John Merritt's penultimate corner mistake costs him 2nd place. And Tim Harris came around the corner, nearly drove right into him, gathered it up to just squeak past into second place. And the rest of the field coming through the close battles all the way through the midfield between Sean Doyle and Jacob Wallmeyer, between Brodie Shepherd and Benjamin Wheeler, between Tony Baker, Warren Henry, Nathan Verney. James Chastanoff ends up 12th. He was a shout for the win. He was catching the leaders, and it fell apart for him after the pit stop.
Yeah, I think frustration, they're getting the better of Chastanoff towards the end, but car 22, our feature race winner here tonight in Barber Motorsport Park, taking the win after a very action-packed 12 laps here, and after a great result in the opening round at Laguna Seca 2 weeks ago. Stuart Vaughan, race winner here at Barber Motorsport Park, continues that good form.
A great combined result for him, all things considered, coming from 5th on the grid to 4th in race number 1, from 4th on the grid in race number 2 to the race win, and keeping the championship very, very close with 4 rounds still to go. Here's how they finished race number 2. Stuart Vaughan, Tim Harris, John Merritt, and then Sean Doyle coming home to 4th, and Jacob Wallmeyer in 5th there. Biggest mover in the race, indeed he was, from 15th on the grid to 5th place, and even contending for the podium at points, it must be said. Brodie Shepherd, Ben Wheeler, Adrian Duke, Tony Baker, Warren Henry as the top 10, and then it was Nathan Verney, James Chastanoff, losing 23 seconds in the final stint to 2 spins and a slow pit stop. Dennis Hancock, Ira Felberg, Matthew Mites, Darren Shannon, Ash Knowles, John Snell, Peter Wilkinson, and Leon Williams. Everyone, it looks like, finished on the lead lap in race number 2 as well, because I'm seeing 12 laps completed from 21st place, Brendan Nealon, and 22nd place, Peter Bowling. So experience from race 1 to race 2 paying off. It wasn't clean for everyone, but no as big incidents as race number 1 had. Give me a thought about Barber Motorsport Park, Jason, and we'll see if we can get any of our race winners to stop by.
Yeah, well, like we touched on earlier on in the race or in the broadcast, this circuit and this car combination is an absolutely stellar when they're combined together, and the action tonight on the Ozicar Series proved to be action-packed from the moment the lights went green. So we'll have a quick chat to some of our podium getters, particularly here in the feature race right now, and we might drag our 3rd place getter from our feature race up into the commentary box and welcome John Merritt, the driver, the pilot of the Pulse Tuning Toyota Echuca 1600. Welcome to the commentary box.
G'day, guys.
Well, you had your hands full for the best part of race number 2, but we'll start with race number 1. 13-second victory to the guys behind. David touched on it during the broadcast, an absolutely clinical performance to start the night off.
Yeah, it started better than it finished, but race 1 I was probably a bit lucky. I think a couple of guys came together and a few early incidents, so any of these little single open wheelers, V's and Fords, if you get that gap, it's sort of hard to run down from there, so I was pretty fortunate.
Well, the old adage, to finish first you must finish, and that was an absolute testament to how you handled race number 1. And comeback race number 2, starting off the front row of the grid, and from the moment the lights went green, you had company right through the sequence. Apart from the one time you did trundle down pit lane, did you enjoy the aspect of not actually having to stop and leave the chances to the gods, so to speak, as we've seen in the past few weeks?
Well, I suppose the battles break out different way, or it sort of funnels out a different, but I mean, I think that tells you it works, like where Stuart and I rejoined the track nearly the same spot and the battle resumed, so I think it worked. Hopefully it did for everyone else. It sort of takes that wild card a bit out of it, but at least the variance of the pit lane transit.
Yeah, well, there still is some variance because we saw a couple of drivers come unstuck through the pit entry. And then, of course, there is still the risk of getting a pit lane penalty for exceeding your speed limit. So there is some curveballs that can be thrown. But like you said, you and Stuart went toe-to-toe, nose to bumper for the best part of the race. And then, of course, on the last lap, a little bit of exuberance with the right throttle in the second to last corner.
Yeah, look, it was probably done anyway, but I thought I'll try and get up the outside to be on the inside of the last corner. And I got myself too far out into the grey there, and the rest was history. So At least it made the last couple of corners interesting anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you would have been a sitting duck sitting across the circuit like you were seeing Tim Harris come through in the relative, but he's done a pretty good job to avoid you, and you got back up to speed and finished the round in P3, and collectively a first and a third. I think you might have actually won the round.
Yeah, hopefully it's a good start to the season. So I'd always have fun in the series and racing Stuart and James, Timmy, and all the other guys. So I don't know what happened to James because he was sort of right with us. So I assume something played out in his pit transit.
He ended up having 3 spins in the last 2.5 laps, and frustration got the better of him, I think, towards the end of the race. So it left it as a two-horse battle, but nonetheless, both yourself and Stuart put on a heck of a show for us this evening. So before we let you go, we'll do a shout-out to all your sponsors, your supporters, and anyone else you might like to mention.
Yeah, shout out to Glenn Cedo Riddell, Pulse Tuning, and Echuca Toyota for all the support.
All right, my friend, we will see you back in a fortnight's time at Willow Springs Raceway, a circuit that we haven't been to before. We should be a pretty even playing field for a lot of these drivers, and no doubt the action will continue there as we make our way towards the halfway point of the season.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
The third place getter tonight in our feature race there, John Merritt, in the very distinctive red and yellow livery, the Pulse Tuning Formula Ford 1600. But Dave, I think you've been for a bit of a wander and you've come across and you've caught up with Stuart Vaughan.
Absolutely. A race 2 winner joins us. Race 1, not quite how you would have expected. Let's start there and work our way to race number 2. Difficult braking there with the crest of the hill.
Yeah, I was in a bit of a state of panic. I had 3 invalidated qualifying laps because of internet dropping out. So after I relaunched, I didn't quite check the brake bias, and I probably should have, because as I just sent it in there, I just locked up, and it was it was pretty embarrassing to say the least, mate. I really do apologise to James for that one. Tried my hardest to get out of it, but there was nothing I could do once I hit the brakes.
Kept going. You set the fastest lap of the race in that one. You got a pretty important 4th place to bag some points and then start you on the second row of the grid for race number 2. That was a real back and forth fight almost the whole way, yourself and John Merritt. Really hard stuff.
Yeah, I definitely didn't deserve the result in race 1, to be honest. But yeah, race 2 was good fun. I knew I had the pace to battle with John, and I know he's always a clean, hard racer. So just as usual, we put on a bit of a show, but luckily I came out on top.
Now, it seems occasionally you might have a 1/10 of a second per lap over him, but Merritt seems like one of those really consistent, methodical kind of drivers, the ones that are difficult to beat over a championship distance. Are you maybe starting to think about that at this point?
I think I have to, mate, and race 1 proves that. If you have one bad sort of race, you can definitely send you back, because I think with the sort of fastest lap bonuses and qualifying bonuses, I think he might have me by a point or 2 in this one. So it doesn't matter always where you finish, because those couple of bonus points can really make the difference.
And some interesting tracks and formats coming up in the back half of the calendar. Not many people are as familiar with Willow Springs as they are with, say, Laguna Seca, where we started, and then an oval enduro as well. I mean, how do you think that will work for you and the championship?
Yeah, I think Willow Springs will provide some good racing. I haven't turned any laps there on iRacing, but I've done a few on Gran Turismo, and it's a pretty open track as well, so if someone goes off, there's always a chance you can sort of make back some ground. But the oval, certainly I'm looking forward to that, because the last time I did it in a Formula V, it was chaos, but it was awesome.
Well, it'll be interesting for you, it'll be interesting for us, and we look forward to seeing you for those.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Stuart Vaughan, 4th and a 1st, very open and candid with his feelings about both of the races. Jason.
Yeah, well, welcome to the commentary box. Our second place getter in the feature race tonight, 8th place in race number 1, but the feature race is where he really shone high. Timothy Harris, driver of car 093 from the Locked On Lads race team. Welcome to the commentary box, mate.
Yeah, g'day, mate. Thanks for having us.
Well, tonight you've actually proved a little bit of luck on your side, and you've shown a lot of the speed we've known that you've had over the previous rounds, but to put it all together tonight to bring it home with a well-earned P2.
Yeah, well, I have to start off by apologising to Jacob Allmeyer for lap 1 of race 1, because that was pretty average on my part. Just got a bit wide onto the grass, and I thought I was actually right coming back where I was, but yeah, got a bit of a tank slap going, and that ended poorly, so back to P last then. So yeah, to come back to a second was great, so thanks Johnny for that. Obviously John and Stuart are both miles ahead of the rest of us, really, and it's pretty cool even just watching the delta in front of us, so you know what's going on during the race as they're driving off into the sunset. But yeah, luckily Johnny didn't quite make the sunset, so I'll take that, because you never know when you're going to get another one.
No, it was all swings and roundabouts, and like I said, you showed plenty of good speed at Laguna Seca 2 weeks ago, and despite that little hiccup in race number 1, you still had a pretty good result to finish inside the top 10, and of course that gave you a pretty good starting position off row number 4 for the feature race tonight, and that's where you've capitalised through some good clean racing, some I wouldn't say a lot of pit strategy, but was there much thought as to when you were going to actually pit, or did you make that up on the fly depending on what traffic was around you?
Yeah, it feels like you can sort of get away with it on the fly. In hindsight, I perhaps dived in a little bit early. I think ultimately I should have perhaps been a little bit later, but I just thought, you know what, I'll just get myself in some clearish air and hopefully get a bit of tow as I'm coming back through, and clear a track, clear a head, and just, you know, try and do some consistent laps, because it probably wasn't fast enough to really do too much. But I think with consistency and lap time without racing people, I think it's probably about the peak that I was going to achieve really out of it all.
Well, nonetheless, took a opportunity presented itself, and you came across the line with P2 tonight, so a very, very good result. Great haul of points so early in the season, so I'm sure you'll be looking forward to continue that at a circuit that we haven't been to before in 2 weeks' time when we go back to Willow Springs. Have you turned any laps here yet?
I think I've done about 3 laps, and it was pretty similar to race 1, lap 1 tonight, so look out, because it'll be at least entertaining for someone.
Yes, well, we'll be back here in 2 weeks' time. Of course, there'll probably be a little bit of dirt on the circuit with some cars making some off-track adventures as well, so that could make things interesting and the track a little bit slippery as we have a look on screen to see what's actually involved out in the desert. There's not a lot of scrub and flora and fauna around the place, but very elevated nonetheless, and a lot of off-camber corners, so things should be pretty interesting when we come back in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, look, I think if anyone can take a bit of inspiration from SVG this morning and his performance jumping into something foreign and just having a go, I reckon we can drive some Formula Fords around there without too much fuss, so it should be fun.
All right, before we let you go, Tim, do you want to do a shout out to any of your sponsors and fellow supporters?
Yeah, just thanks to all the Locked On boys, and Chastity had a bit of a rough end to that one, so chin up, mate. We've got a couple more to go and we'll get drop rounds, so let's do it.
Beautiful. Second place getter tonight, feature race, Tim Harris. So he is in form at the moment, showing plenty of good speed out on track and converting that into a podium here this evening on your Simspeed broadcast. David?
Yeah, that's about all from us, isn't it? Tonight from Barber Motorsports Park in Ozicar Formula Ford Series. 2 super exciting races, 2 different race winners, and a championship that absolutely hangs in the balance in a battle between raw speed and polished consistency. We'll see what happens for 4 more rounds, and big thanks, of course, to our Aussie car supporters, Sim Racing League's Locked On Lads, and Prestige Trophy Badge and Engraving. All of it in support of the No Social Hate campaign as well. 2 weeks' time, catch you again here on Simspeed for more Aussie car Formula Ford from Willow Springs.